I'm Debra Tornabin. Thank you for watching. Did you know that 1 in 4 children in America is illiterate? That students who don't read at the standardized level by 4th grade are 4 times more likely to drop out of school, go to prison, and become welfare recipients? And that America is the only free market country where the current generation is less educated than the previous one? Over the years, many of my programs have emphasized the importance of early childhood development and literacy. Today, I want to bring this issue back to the forefront and share with you a portion of my interview with legendary author and literacy advocate James Patterson. We're here at the Colony Hotel in Palm Beach, and I want to introduce you to my first guest, Susan Beattie, a local educator and author. Susan, I'm so glad you're here with us today. I just love your story, and I'm so happy to be able to share this with our audience because it really is about survival and destiny, and your life story is an adventure. But it all began with a stray little rescue dog named Luke. You know, we all love animals so much, and to introduce Luke to our audience, I wanted you to tell us how he came into your life and really began your whole children's series.
Well, thank you for having me and letting me share Luke's story. It seems I've been telling this story quite a bit the last couple years, and I love to share it. Luke's story started when my son asked me to help him in his jewelry store. He was just opening, and he called me and said, "Mom, I'm adopting a puppy." And my response was, "Are you sure that's a good idea?" So he said, his name is Luke. And I was like, okay. The next day I met Luke. He was a little tiny, little black velvety puppy with big brown eyes. And my son told me his story, that he was abandoned with a couple litter mates on the side of a road. And he was taken to by animal care and control. This was in North Florida. And you know, the dogs only stay for a certain period of time. Mm-hmm. And then if they're not adopted or picked up by an adoption organization, their life is over. So Big Dog Ranch sent volunteers to pick him up and his 2 litter mates. And so when they got there, Luke was very, very sick, and they knew he was not going to make the trip back down here to their facility. Mm-hmm. So thank goodness for the volunteers. They rushed him to an emergency clinic, and he received critical care for several days. So my son is telling me the story, and I'm melting,
of course,
looking at this puppy, at what he went through, how he survived, and obviously he, didn't give up. And now he, was adopted and had a home. So that was the inspiration for my feelings, and wow, what a great story about survival. So that's how it started.
It's so perfect because, first of all of our viewers love animals. We all do. Mm-hmm. And to really have you capture his story and put it into a children's book to give children the opportunity to understand the importance of compassion and kindness to animals, I think was so beautiful that you did that. Also perfect that we're here at the Colony Hotel because Luke really became, a mascot to Worth Avenue.
Yes, he did.
Is that what started your thought of writing the book, or was it his story?
First it was his story, and then he was the door greeter. He would stand at the door. We keep the door open, so when people would walk by, they felt comfortable to come in, and everybody stopped to talk to Luke. And then he ended up with his red tie, which is in his story, how he got his red tie. And he was such a draw, and kids would come by, and he'd shake, his paw with them. And one day he really did eat a little package of pave diamonds, and the word spread through Worth Avenue, and people came by and asked if they could walk him that day. So there was a lot of humor.
That is so
funny.
And,
there was a lot. So one day I was just going through the pictures, and I just thought, what a great story. But I had first started passing out a card. I made a little 3x5 card, right, and I titled it Luke's Story, so that when people would ask, I could begin to educate them about animal adoption, certainly rescue adoption, exactly, and helping this particular organization, Big Dog Ranch. So that's how it started. Then it was, there's more to this.
Yes.
If I want to teach this, having been a teacher in Palm Beach County schools for many years, the best way is through a story and through a book. And there was more to it.
Right. And so you were inspired, and the first book that you wrote was Luke's Story. I'm so happy for you that you won an award for the story because it certainly deserves it. You won the Gold President's Nonfiction Award for Children by the Florida Authors and Publishers Association. So congratulations on that.
Thank you.
This book is now in the school system, and is that what prompted you to now begin a series about his adventures?
It actually first was reading the story to a small group of children. Mm-hmm. And I remember it was even emotional for me. I never thought I would have those feelings reading it, but a lot was going through my mind as I read the story to them. And then I wanted to take it further, which meant actually going into the school system. So I called, I know some teachers that I taught with, and I actually asked if I could come and present Luke's story to the school. And I actually used to teach there. So it was like a reunion for me.
Tell us about your experience when you read before these children and you saw how engaged they were.
There were so many children at times, honestly 200 to 300 children, and they were glued to the presentation. And what I felt as I read it, I felt a lot of oohs and ahs and laughter, and I could feel their emotions as I read the story. But the best part was Luke was in another room, and the children didn't know he was there.
Oh.
So when Luke came out in the end as a surprise, it was just that solid connection between, it's the human-animal bond.
Absolutely.
And that I knew I just needed to keep going with this.
Yes, and you know, to see children today engaged, first of all, our school system is so multicultural, and reading for many is such a challenge.
Right.
And when you bring a book about a dog, which all children cross cultures can relate to, and then you get to meet the dog. This was such a wonderful light, I would imagine, in all these children's hearts to say, I want that book, I want to read that book. So I want to know how you felt at that moment.
Right. I felt that I wanted to do more, and it actually was a child that raised his hand and asked if I was writing another book. Oh. Right there, that told me they want more.
Oh.
And I remember thinking, wow, you know how in your mind
Yes.
It's like I hadn't planned on writing the first book, and no, I hadn't, but right away I said, yes, I am. And
that
so,
was wonderful.
And the children are my inspiration, and that's why I keep going.
So from the series we have Luke's Story, which is the first book, and then we have Luke's Gold Rush Adventure, and then the third story is Luke's Shipwreck Treasure Voyage. And then the fourth one, although you're writing 4 more, I understand,
right, yes.
is Luke's Orient Express Journey. So to me, this book has a special meaning. I mean, I love Luke's story because it was the beginning of everything. But this particular story, not only the historic component of it and the pocket watch that you talk about in it has such meaning to me, but also what was happening in Luke's life during the time you were writing the story is just amazing. So share with the audience about that.
I received a phone call, and they asked if Luke could help a litter of puppies. Mm-hmm. They had parvovirus, which is what Luke had, and he carries the antibodies. And so I agreed, and Luke saved a litter of puppies. And one of them's name is Jules, and Jules is featured in the book. Luke saves Jules on that journey in the stagecoach. So, and again, I put history in there, and
right.
I put a couple historical people that went on this ride.
And you put that in the story. You also were in the jewelry store, and you saw a timepiece, and you also incorporated that into your stories. Tell us about that a little bit.
When I was in the store, I looked over and I saw a gold pocket watch. Yes. And I picked it up and I asked my son about it. And he said, yeah, that's a very old pocket watch. We're just trying to find the value. And I actually took on the task of researching the watch, the make, and
right.
found it. So that was why the story, to find out whose pocket watch was that back in time.
So again, life, created this story
yes.
for you again, which is so
yes.
wonderful that you're in tune to all of this and you were able to put it in a children's story. I mean, people may think it's very easy to write children's books, but I would imagine it's way harder because
right.
especially today with all of the different information that is coming to children, to keep their focus and to keep them inspired and interested is difficult. And you've put all these components together. And I think it's wonderful. We really need to get children reading. Here are some facts as to why children are not reading, and I wanted to share them with all of you. It's from a Scholastic article published by Lou Ann Johnson, and she says, children are not born with a natural aversion to reading, but rather aversions are developed. And some of the reasons why children don't want to read is because reading gives them a headache or makes their eyes hurt. They can't read as fast as their peers. They fear that if they read out loud, others will laugh at them. They're too far behind to catch up with the work. They have no interest in the material that they're reading, and they get lost and can't remember what they just read. And so as an educator, as a teacher, why do you think it's important for us, obviously, to get kids to read, but not only to read, but to read a book?
As a teacher, as a parent who raised children, and now I have grandchildren, I still see that they get excited about holding a book and turning the pages. And I think the other thing that is super important are illustrations. Mm-hmm. Typically illustrations are in big books, beginning readers, but then when you get into what they call chapter books, mm-hmm. there may be some line drawings, but it's not as colorful. So I have my own feelings about what makes a child want to. It has to be pleasing to the mm-hmm. eye. And also they learn by looking at the pictures. Mm-hmm. So whether they're a fluent reader, I feel they still need illustrations. So that's part of how I feel.
Yes.
The other part is, yes, you have to give them a subject that they're interested in and that draws them in. And an adventure takes children to places where they might not otherwise go. Mm-hmm. That's the fun of an adventure. And probably even further than that is a series. Once they get hooked on the first book and the characters, and they're familiar with the characters and they like the characters, that brings them to the second book. And then they want to keep reading more. Yes. So there are ways to draw them in.
Mm-hmm. And isn't it important, too, if the child is not of age to read to the children? Why do people not understand that is so important?
I don't know, and I think sometimes they slip these computers in front of them, and I think there's some advantages to having possibly these boards, but to have a real book and to sit with them it's critical.
Yes.
It really is. And so, it's like same thing with writing. They're typing so much mm-hmm. that, holding a pencil and actually writing.
Yes.
I am a big promoter of that.
Absolutely. I mean, every country fights to be able to read a book without being censored and to be able to write. And here we are just giving that right away. It just frustrates me so much. But, the children are learning from you. You're sitting there with this group of children as an educator. What have you learned the most from the children?
What have I learned the most? That they really want good books. I mean, you can tell by their questions, and that they do love animals and that they want to be compassionate. And a lot of what I'm doing in my books is trying to inspire them to be leaders. They are our future, and to be the hero. And they get it.
Yes.
And it feels better to be a hero than it does to be a villain of sorts. So in terms of animals, it feels good to save animals. Mm-hmm. And that's why I feature not only my characters in the books as heroes, but at the end of every book, the real-life heroes that work with the animals in our community. And actually globally, I feature animal rescue organizations in other countries.
The books are available in the public school system. How did that happen?
Well, first I went before the board of safe schools in Palm Beach County. I already had permission to go in and do my presentations, but I wanted a little more from that. Mm-hmm. I wanted actually to be listed as an official humane education outreach program.
Beautiful.
So I went before and I presented the actual series, what I was doing now in my future. So it was approved, and that was the next step into hopefully putting the books in all libraries. And that just happened a couple weeks ago. They did review the books, and they will be in 112 elementary school libraries. Around 80,000 children will have access to these books. And I would say probably I have presented almost to maybe 20,000 children in the 4 years I've been doing this. So that's the benefit too, that I go into the schools and they get to see and hear the story. Then they can have access to the books.
Is there one child that you met that really kind of like touched your heart, even, really stood out to you?
I have a couple, but I will say when I get there in the morning, I would walk around, as the kids are coming in and they're all looking at me, and a lot of them know, I'm an author. And to be really honest, I had kind of a little boy that seemed to have a bit of an attitude, and he kind of made a comment, and I could tell I need to reach this young man. Do you know, he's one that came up to me after the presentation asking me questions. And I think that stood out to me, that, even someone that, there was some difficulty going on in his life, that I was able to reach him.
Right.
And that's the purpose of this, is to reach. And then another little girl raised her hand, and with a big smile on her face, she said, "I was adopted." And my heart melted, because it was a beautiful thing, the connection.
Yes.
Luke is adopted, and I was adopted. So we had a little conversation, had my picture taken with her. So that was special.
That is special, because that made that child feel like she was okay.
Yeah.
I'm
and
okay.
that she's special.
Exactly, exactly. And I think that's the whole purpose of reading for children, to be able to relate to the story, to keep them engaged, and to let them want more. You have kept them wanting more.
Wanting more.
So tell us what's next. What's happening next?
Well, the 4 books are out. I have 4 books that will be completed and out by September 1st.
The second series.
The second series, and I call these are like collections. And this one is getting a lot more into the wildlife and touching on some issues very delicately. I am handling some of the issues with wildlife.
Yes.
And I think that we have to teach this to young children, and they need to understand the terms. And if it's presented tastefully, it will be positive.
Yeah, because these are going to be the change makers of our future.
These are our future.
Yeah. If Luke could talk to us right now, what would he say?
Oh my goodness. I look over sometimes when I want to give up.
Yes.
And he's looking at me.
Yes.
And saying, "Don't give up."
Don't give up. And how can people find you?
They can go on my website,
Yes.
lukesstory.com, LUKESSTORY. If anyone is interested in having me come to their school, I have a tab that talks all about the school visits.
Perfect.
And the different programs for each book and what I teach.
Well, I am so proud of you for the work you're doing. I think that we as a community and as a nation have to get our children reading again. And I think that although your series is a small part of that, one change, one child at a time, and I think that you are making such a difference, and I'm really, really happy to have this time with you.
Thank you.
And I look forward to
Thank
the next four.
And it is a 15-book series, so,
so
there'll be
watch out
more.
for it. Yes. Thank you so much for being with us today.
Thank you for having
You really
me.
are a force for change. Thank
you.
Thanks. And now I want to share part of my interview with world-acclaimed author and literacy advocate James Patterson. In case you haven't heard, in his spare time, he's leading the way for authors like Susan to get kids reading. Here's what he has to say.
We can't solve the healthcare problem. We can't solve the national debt. We can't solve global warming or global weirding or whatever you believe in terms of that. But we can, in most cases, get our kids reading. We can do that. We can do that. Parents will come up to me and always go, well, I can't get my kid reading. I go, what do you mean you can't get your kid reading? Do you get them to the dinner table? If you can get them to the dinner table, you can get them to read. You just have to make it a rule of the house. The more kids read, the better they get at it. I'll go into schools and I'll say, who likes soccer? Yeah, we all, Okay, better now or 3 years ago? We're better now. Why is that? Because we play a lot. Okay, it's the same with reading.
Yes.
If you read a lot, you get better at it. And parents need to get that into their heads. And the main thing they do, and they're going to act on this once they understand it is our job. It is our job. It's my job. It's your job. It's the people's watching job to go out and find books for their kids. I have a site, readkidorread.com. It is not about my books. That's readkidorread.com. Kiddo, Kiddo, read.com. On the site, there are like 500 books that are going to turn kids on, and they do them by age.
Right.
You can go on the site, and in 3 minutes,
It's very easy. I went on the site.
couldn't be
Very
easier.
easy. It's wonderful.
And
Actually
you will
wonderful.
find a bunch of books in that age group for your kids. Any book that's in there is going to be pretty much a turn on. And there'll be a little write-up, not a review, just a write-up, so you'll know what the content is, and you'll be able to decide, is that something that I think my child will like, or my grandchild, or whatever. And then, you pick out a few books on there with a lot of help from the site, and you go to your library or online or a bookstore, however you get books.
But we talked about Jack and how he's a great kid, and I got a chance to actually see that because we have a clip of your son, which I think is so great, interviewing his father, James Patterson. So let's take a look here's Jack. Let's take a look.
Can reading really change people's lives, and how?
Reading really can change people's lives, and that's the main reason that we're here, because it can change the lives of pretty much everyone watching this webcast, and there are a lot of kids watching this, and teachers watching this webcast. And what you have to understand is, one, the more you read, the better you get at it, and the better you read, the easier school is going to be, the better person you're going to be, the more interesting person you're going to be, and ultimately, the more choices you're going to have in life.
How did you feel when Jack actually interviewed you? How did that make you feel?
He's interviewed me a few times, and the first time he did it at the school for their, and he sort of did a Will Ferrell, so Dad, which was pretty funny. This time he had to be a little straighter. This webcast, and I think this is another kind of important thing for schools. This webcast went out, 90,000 kids saw it the first day, and they're continuing to show it to more schools. And I think that idea of bringing not just James Patterson, but terrific scientists and doctors and whatever into the schools in this way is, in terms of webcasts. I mean, you could, in any school you could do 2 or 3 of these a week,
right? And
kids could meet people that they could never meet in real life. So I think this is a real valuable tool.
I think your work in our community is really incredible. I mean, I know you love giving back.
We can do great things with education in Palm Beach County, and if we do it, it becomes a model for Florida. If you can establish really high reading levels, if we could ever create a science high school, which I think every county should have a science high school, because you want these kids that are brilliant in science not to have that glass ceiling.
Exactly.
You want them not to have to sit in classes where half the class is really going to kind of hold the other kids back. So and then you want that high school to also, in addition to letting them flourish in the sciences, you want there to be enough of the arts so that they become balanced and complete individuals.
So really, I mean, America's great, but we're really losing our edge a little bit, and we got to get those kids reading to really be able to have a next generation of people who are going to make a difference.
Well, we do, and I mean, the thing about our kids reading is they'll be better citizens, they'll be better people, they'll be more interesting people, and it just opens so many doors for them. If they can't read, high school is going to be really hard. They may not get through high school. The next step, college, will be either they won't get in, or if they don't read well. And then in terms of what you want your kids to go out and have a lot of options.
Yes.
If they don't read well, for the most part, unless they happen to be an outrageous rock and roll star, for the most part, they're not going to have as rich a life.
Right. So parents or grandparents who are watching, you
Yeah.
got to get your kids reading, because you worry about them every day of their lives, and if you
Right.
want to give them a good future, a good chance, get them reading.
There's nothing, I think, more important for the people watching it. If you really think about your kids, it's great you taught them how to ride a bicycle. That's a fine thing to do. You taught them how to throw a baseball. Cool, good thing to do. Did you turn them into readers? If you didn't, in my opinion, you're really shortchanging them. Because I think it's probably the most important thing you can do, that they leave your house as good readers.
I enjoyed my time with James Patterson. I hope you did too. Not only is he a legendary author, but he's truly a champion for literacy and education. To see more of my interview with James Patterson, go to our website. I hope you enjoyed this program. Remember, a child's reading skills are important to their success in school and life, and reading should be an adventure which opens doors to all kinds of new worlds, enhancing communication skills and promoting lifelong learning. Be an advocate for literacy, and be sure to read to a child in your life. I'm Debra Tornabin. Go make a difference.